Hello everybody, today on JayEmm Friends we're going to invite you to share in a long-running domestic dispute that Anthony and I have been having, which regards, well, no one particular organisation, I want to make that absolutely clear, but anything that has the word supercar in the title.
And in particular, what we're talking about is clubs, events, that sort of thing. And many times we've invited him to events and he said, nope, I'm not coming because it's got supercar in the title. Or sometimes it's an event that's, I don't know, got a substantial amount of hypercars. He said, not interested. And I'm like, why? So there's just certain places we can't hang out.
It's true. So we thought it would be entertaining to explain a little bit of my madness to you all, and I will accept it is a little bit irrational. I'll make my case, you can make your case, and then of course, all of you good people hop into the comment section and tell us why I'm right. Here's my thing. Now, this applies legitimately to anything that has supercar in the title. And this applies really to meets whereby the requirement is to own a supercar and drives. Now, my issue with any meet that requires you to own a supercar to be there, because I've gone to plenty of events that feature heavily supercars, but to, you know, that are open to everybody, and that's fine, or lots of events where supercars are a part of, and you've also got classics and sports and all sorts of stuff. But I just dislike the notion of the car as an exclusive thing. And because also I think supercars are a, you know, by definition, generally quite expensive thing, essentially what I see that is a let's keep the poor out. I've often commonly referred to some of these events as the 12-inch club as well. And this, to be honest, the thing I actually have the bigger problem with is the drives. Right. Because if you have a meet somewhere, private land, minding your own business, whatever, you know what, live and let live. Honestly, it genuinely doesn't actually bother me. But it's the drives that are often associated with many of these clubs. I've known people that do them, and I've heard plenty of stories where things have gone wrong, or liberties have been taken with the local rules and regulations. And I do worry that, you know, you get this group of people who go out there and, you know, neither of us are going to claim to be saints. You know, we've both enjoyed our cars at various points in time, but I think there's a big difference between one person going out, picking your time and your place to have a little bit of fun in your car on your terms, versus, and you see this on track days as well, you know, you've got different people in different cars with, you know, different performance levels, different abilities of driver, and then you chuck in a potentially unhealthy dose of bravado, and we've all seen those moments, you know, both on track and on the road, where somebody is driving beyond the limits of either their or their machine's capability, and it ends badly. And when these things happen, that, I think, is another thing that could potentially give the car enthusiast in general a bad name. And as you all know, you know, I do the Sporting Bears, you know, where we take people out for passenger rides in fancy cars, including supercars, and, you know, do a bit of good for everybody. And I worry that someone being a bit of a Burke, you know, with their mates and their Lamborghinis and their McLarens and their Ferraris up in Scotland or in Wales or somewhere, is going to stop stuff like that being able to happen.
I don't think that's fair. And I'll tell you why I don't think it's fair. Because I've been on plenty of drives with all sorts of different cars, whether it's supercars or Japanese cars or just a mixed bag. And it doesn't matter whether you're driving a Vauxhall Corsa that's been, you know, had its springs cut and, you know, had a, I don't know, cheap turbo slapped onto it, or a hypercar. You can have people driving stupidly across the range. And
that's
arguably,
that's true.
Arguably, at many of the sort of the local meets where you get the younger crowd who like to do donuts in the local supermarket car park, a lot of the time I see worse driving in those circumstances.
Yeah.
And I think you're going to get bad drivers or dangerous drivers or inconsiderate drivers at the very least across the entire range. I think it's unfair that that gives everyone a bad name. And a really good example is a friend of mine, she organised a regular car meet. It was fantastic, really chill, nothing really bad happened, but it just grew and grew and grew. In the space of a year, it went from something like 10 cars to 600 cars. She had to move the venue, and then eventually she thought, well, let me find a venue that's like more than double the size. I'll have the event there, and then we've got space to grow. 2,000 cars showed up for 2,000 spaces. Now, probably 10 to 20 people left in a slightly exuberant manner that was probably a little bit too much. 20 out of 2,000, and that was it. The whole event got banned from that venue. So I think you're going to get that. You know, you see these videos online, sports cars leaving a car show, and supercars leaving a car meet, and whatever.
You go
so
to any of these shows, there's like a dozen people with cameras at the end of every one of them.
Yeah, literally hoping for someone to bin it so that they can get more views. But that's what I think is unfair. I think you're going to get that kind of driving across the board. The difference is you're more often going to find cars that can do much faster speeds and get to those speeds much more quickly, but I don't think we can blame supercar drivers. So that part I think is unfair.
Well, the thing is, like, I've been on quite a few different drives out with like mixed things, and some of the groups I was a part of, they would have the spirited group and the we're just out for a nice bimble group, and that works really well. And you know, typically classic car owner groups, like they are just going out for a drive. I think I will not do any drives out, as you well know. People ask me all the time, people invite me and say, hey, I've done this, you should come and join this group, we do drives out. I refuse to do it because as there is always a possibility of something going wrong, something that you might not even be connected to. You know, someone just happened to be in the same time and place as you, and if you were maybe part of the same group, like, you know, things can get back to you even if they weren't related. So I just decide to remove the element of risk entirely. If I want to go out and have fun in the car, I'll do it on my own. I will not do it as part of a group because, you know, I've seen things happen and go wrong, and it's unfair, and the group always suffers. The reason that I'm particularly against the supercar thing is that I would say that they almost exclusively drive far too fast. I have not heard of anybody go on one of these events where they go, oh, it's lovely, had a nice bimble, a couple of little blasts here and there, and it was fine. Most of them come back going, tyres are knackered, brakes are shot. Oh yeah, no, we ploughed through here a little bit too quickly, and yeah, people go, yeah, actually no, well, we were doing about 160 through here, and you go, that's a 60 limit. Like, what are you doing? We're later on today going to record a video about the positive side of supercar ownership, because I think actually, if anything, the supercar, we've talked about it before, is, I think, quite at risk as a breed. I think the supercar is the thing that's going to be killed first off by the transition towards electric and everything else for reasons we've discussed previously, and I want them to stay around for as long as they can. But to me, key to being able to enjoy them is being able to enjoy them responsibly.
Now, I think the issue really comes down to the clubs that you join, because as we said, we weren't going to mention any names, but there's one particular club that I'm a member of, Supercar Club, and there's never been an issue. Everybody drives smart, everyone drives sensible, and it's exactly like that. We have a nice cruise, we have a few blasts here and there, and everyone gets to their destination safely. I just don't think you're being entirely fair. I think it's stereotyping, and I think you're letting the media poison your mind against other car enthusiasts. So
no. I think it's just, there's a possibility these things can happen, but when it's supercars, there's a guarantee these things will happen. I dislike the elitism of it, and also, and I appreciate, here I am going to be a real hypocrite, right? A lot of these clubs also let in things that are definitely not supercars by my definition anyway. So I'm also a bit like Groucho Marx, like I'm not really sure I'd want to be a part of any club that would have me as a member. There are a few out there that I really like, but, you know, I mean, I'd love to do more stuff, but unfortunately I just don't really have too much time for it. I love shows, because if anything, to me, actually, the reason I love shows is because you get to meet people. Where actually, when you're out on a drive, you can't really talk to people.
Well, what I'm curious about is what's this thing with, like, because you're not, if it's a car that you can't see yourself owning, you're just not interested in it. Whereas me and my son Damani, we're just fascinated by the engineering, the craftsmanship that goes into making them, and we love to see the end result, the different specifications you can get, the beautifully created carbon fiber that's literally perfect, that's probably taken 10 throwaway panels to get that one panel. We actually quite like that. But we do hear from a lot of people, oh, I'm not interested in hypercars because I'll never be able to afford one. Or even some people will say, oh, I'm not interested in supercars because I'll never be able to afford one. What's your thing? Why don't you like it?
Yeah, no, there are some that I have a real appreciation for. Probably the one of the moment that I'm most curious about would be, say, like the Gordon Murray T50 or T33. I think, unfortunately, they're both indescribably unpleasing cars to the eye, considering that to me, like a super or hypercar should be beautiful. Like it's an object to behold. Even if you're the sort of person that owns one and drives it, you're going to spend most of your time looking at it instead. And so to me, to ignore aesthetics to the point that he has is, I think, a mistake. But other than that, I really admire the dedication to a particular school of engineering that means that those cars, you know, with the not particularly powerful but high revving and, heard one person, glorious sounding engine, you know, the manual gearbox, like the, you know, the keeping the weight low, all that sort of stuff. You know, we passed a point a long time ago where performance numbers got to the point where you were going to be able to really notice a difference in the vast majority of scenarios. We've both spent some time the other week in the Ferrari 296. It was 830 horsepower hybrid Ferrari V6. But were you actually driving that car any quicker than your R8?
No.
Part of that because it's not yours, and you know, I get in trouble if you break it, and then you get in trouble if you break it. First off, the car just struggles to put its power down. I mean, it does an exceptionally good job, but there gets to a point where your limit is tyres.
Yep.
If that car had another 200 horsepower, it would not have been any faster than we experienced it. You know, those cars only dig in once you get to like triple digit, you know, speeds.
I mean, theoretically, not that I would have known in person, but it doesn't really give you the power properly until you're kind of midway through third gear anyway.
Yeah.
Like, it holds back an awful lot because it's putting down as much as it can. As soon as it feels slip, it's just holding back the power. It's not until you get some momentum, then it starts to give you the power. So it's like you can't really use it. But yes, cars have got to levels of absolute insane power that we can't use. However, hypercars, why are you just not interested?
I feel like now they're being built in lieu of building supercars. There are quite a few examples out there. So for example, I want to take a really good one. The Koenigsegg Gemera, their four-seater thing. They originally announced it as a, you know, 3-cylinder fancy free valve plus mega hybrid, this, that and the other. And then they said, oh, actually, we're going to do the V8 instead, and it's going to be more money. But I think by the time you spec one of those, it's 2.5 or 3 million quid, something like that. Now, Zondas, when the Zonda was new, they were £300,000. Now, that was a heck of a lot of money back then. It was like 50% more, I think, than a Lambo. But 300 grand felt like an amount that maybe one day was achievable, you know, in your dream world when you're like 16, 17 or whatever. But now they're 2 and a bit million quid. And I personally, actually I think the new one's about 4 million quid. It's something insane. It's something really, really crazy. But the Wyra was like 2 and a bit million. And I don't see what happened to make it a 2 million quid car beyond the fact that they can charge 2 and a bit million quid. So one I really, really don't like, which I think I might get you to agree with me on this one, is the new Alfa Romeo 33 Stradale. Because we all know, there's no secret about it, that underneath that is an MC20.
Yep.
So what it is a body-kitted MC20 for basically 10 times the price.
Maybe you can justify double because you're making, you know, bespoke panels. There's a much smaller number of the panels that you're making.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's sitting on an MC20, no, I don't think that's justified.
Like a McLaren Elva, a 720 without a roof.
Yep. Yeah.
Where's the justification?
The justification is it's an exclusive thing. So people are going to buy a limited number thing so that they can say that they have that limited number thing. And they're just not going to get... I think actually, ultimately, what really, really upsets me is that I'm basically probably not even going to have the chance to see one of these things used in anger. Like, the only time you would have would be Goodwood. Because the manufacturer generally has taken it there and you'll see it being driven hard. That's it. But like, these are cars that are so rare. You know for a fact they're being bought by people that either have huge car collections or that are trying to, you know, flip them for some sort of crazy profit. A lot of them are coming out of companies that effectively didn't exist before a couple of years ago, and somebody's resurrected an old brand name, got a fancy design, maybe they've gone the whole full electric thing, or they're going to promise some new posh powertrain or whatever. Then you've got stuff like the Valkyrie. The Valkyrie is a race car. Like the Valkyrie sounds and looks like it would be absolutely intolerable on the road. You know my opinion on loud cars, stiff suspension. I'm sure you'd love it. I'd love it.
But it's also the sort of car where if someone said to me, "Do you want to drive it?" I'd be like, well, yeah, I probably would, but also I'm like, I don't know if I'd enjoy it. The one and only time I ever sat in a Pagani was in Florida, and there was a beautiful Huayra, and I had the key to it to just have a look around it. And I actually had the thought at the time, if the guy who owned it said to me, would you like to take it out? Would I?
Hey, just give me a call, I'll be there.
Because
I'll
it was
happily take
basically
over.
a highway in Florida, in Miami.
Yeah.
And you're like, so there's some really aggressive ramps in and out of here.
That's true.
You've got Floridian drivers who I can assure you are not all advanced trained.
No.
And then you're like, am I actually going to enjoy it? If you said to me, we're in the hills outside Los Angeles, on, you know, the favourite haunt of some road testers out there, do you want to go in a Huayra? Yes, please, because I've got a risk of enjoying it.
Yes.
But half the places these cars live, I mean, I read an article the other day talking about how obscenely expensive cars in Singapore are. And I've seen lots of videos from Hong Kong and the like. And you look at these videos and you go, I mean, poor old Scene Through Glass did one where he drove a Honda NSX-R, I think it was, outside Hong Kong. And it's these tight, impossible, narrow mountain roads full of buses and taxis. And I felt bad for him because I'm like, you're driving probably one of the greatest driver's cars ever made. And you're getting as much enjoyment as if we drove around the car park here at the pub.
Yeah, I mean, look, you know me, James. I love a car that's absolutely ridiculous, loud, too stiff for the road. I love it. I just love the experience of it. Even if I'm doing 20 miles an hour, just bouncing along the road is my happy place.
Yeah.
But on the subject of hypercars and how expensive they are, I think there's one thing that a lot of people don't realise about car manufacturing.
Yeah.
Most of our perception of how much a car is worth is based on the majority of cars that are sold, right? But the thing is, the majority of cars that are sold in huge numbers.
Yeah.
Tens of thousands,
You get
hundreds of
economies of
thousands.
scale, yeah.
Exactly. And actually, a lot of car manufacturers won't make a profit for the first few years of a car being on the market.
Yeah.
That's why they'll then have to have like a facelift after a few years, because they need to keep making the car as similar as possible,
Yeah.
so they don't change the
Well,
tooling.
yeah, because they've tooled up for a factory production line, you know,
Yep.
marketing, like everything.
All of these things are so expensive that if you only made 150 Volkswagen Ups, each one of those cars would be £1 million. The fact that these cars are made in smaller numbers, in very bespoke ways, I think is a part of the justification. However, I also think, and I'm going to cite one of my favourite manufacturers for this, Rimac, or now Bugatti Rimac, or Rimac, as some people will call it. His Concept 1 and the Nevera are basically pulling the development of EV technology along, and each of the iterations that they develop of a new motor or new battery or some other piece of electric vehicle technology, that's not good enough for the next generation of their hypercar, but it's more than adequate for mass-produced EVs or hybrids. They've designed and engineered numerous cars for manufacturers all over the world, white labeled. You'd never have known that they did it. But it's the development of that hypercar that drove the advancements in those technologies. And in the idea of selling that vehicle in low quantities, I think the latest one, I think the Concept 1 was like 6 after Richard Hammond decided to try and see if it could fly off the side of a cliff. The latest one I think is 150 cars. The development of that hypercar that drove the advancements in those technologies is a way of getting investors to invest in your company, but instead of giving them shares, you give them a car that's very exclusive. So that's his business model that I think has shifted a lot of things.
I get that. I mean, you know, and there are plenty of companies out there that are slightly more mass market, like Lotus, for example. For a very, very long time, the bit of Lotus that made money wasn't the car selling arm, it was the engineering business.
Yep.
Even other companies like McLaren, you know, a large part of what they do, it's as an engineering business, and the cars are almost like the calling card for what they can do. Like the Rimacs are really, really very cool. And they're very interesting cars, and I get them. I think my other big issue of late with hypercars is that a lot of them, the hypercars have a incredible failure rate in terms of they just don't actually make it to market. Like the number of times you see one and they go, yeah, no, we're going to do this and do this and do this, and it's going to have 5 billion horsepower and it'll have, you know, new internet on it, and, you know, it'll be great and it'll make you a better lover and everything, and you're like, and then it just, you hear nothing from it, and it just fades into obscurity. And you know, so I think maybe it's just because I'm a dullard, I don't know. I just sort of find it difficult to get excited about things that have a really good chance of just not actually ever even being made. You know, even when they do come out, generally it's about, you know, 3 or 4 years too late. And then when, you know, you actually test one of these things against a slightly more productionized car, like you say, those economies of scale kick in and you realize that actually, yeah, that car that, you know, is about a quarter of the price is just as quick in any meaningful scenario. And I adore them as pieces of art, and they're very interesting and everything else. But to me, I generally regard most of them as basically concepts, because as far as I'm concerned, that's all they'll ever be. I got absolutely no problem with Rimac. I think his business model is great because he is an engineering company first. The McMurtry Spearling,
Yeah.
that's an engineering company and a chap that just decided he wanted to make a car for a laugh, basically, and had a wild idea, and they did it, and, you know, more power to them. But yeah, I don't know. It's just me.
There's a road-going version of that
So I hear.
coming soon.
Yeah. Now that car would be lethal.
Oh,
That car would be absolutely
I'd still
lethal.
love to drive one.
Would you like a fun fact about a random car brand that you'll have forgotten? And the minute I say it, you'll go, oh yeah, Caparo.
Oh gosh, that was one of my favourite cars, the T1.
So I know where one is. Actually, I know where several are, because I'm not going to tell you who the company is, but the company got bought by someone as, I think, for a wedding present.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, I think I know who that is.
Yeah.
I don't think I know them, but I think I know who it is.
Yeah, so it's just one of these companies where you're like, we all remember that. We all remember it being on Top Gear. We all remember them saying how interesting and exciting and daring it was. But I'm like, you know what? If I won the Euro Millions tonight, well, more than the £2.90 that I won last week, if I was actually going to buy something really ludicrously expensive to, you know, just stick in my showroom, you know, just look at whatever, I'll buy an old race car. My friend Richard from Challenge the Road, you know, he didn't buy a ProDrive P25 because he's got a Burns Subaru WRC.
Yeah.
I mean, what would you have? The mock version of the old car or the real deal?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, you'd have the real one.
And it'd be even stiffer for you.
But we are digressing slightly. On the subject of, you know, not really having much interest in cars that are unlikely to be one you'll ever afford. This is something I see in comments a fair amount, whether it's on your channel, mine, or anyone else's. And that makes me sad. A supercar should be something aspirational. And yes, to an extent, they're just so expensive now, for a new one at least. But there are some accessible, attainable is the word, attainable used supercars still on the market. You know my past, I've literally come from nothing. It took me nearly 50 years to be able to do it, but I persevered, and eventually I was able to buy a supercar, and now, maybe next year, there might be another one on its way. Watch this space. But I never gave up. So I'm really hoping that people will rethink that sometimes and say, you know what, I'll never be able to afford that car or that type of car, but how could I get there from where I am today? Now, yes, some people from an international audience, it might just literally be absolutely impossible for them no matter what they do. But it does make me sad. I don't know, what are your thoughts on that when you hear people say, I'm never going to afford
I mean, I don't like hearing it,
or whatever.
But to be fair, one of the reasons I take issue with what's happened to the car market is that, you know, one of the reasons I was so obsessed for a long time with, say, the likes of the 355, 550, is that when I was, like, you know, a teenager, they were starting to get to the point where they were 40 grand. And 40 grand seemed like an amount of money that one day, you know, when you're 17, 40 grand, huge sum of money. You know, when you're 30, huge sum of money. But it seemed like an amount of money that with hard work, saving, a bit of luck here and there, it might be doable.
Yep.
You know, so cars coming out at 200, 250 grand didn't bother me, because I was like, yeah, you know what, that Aventador, that looks interesting. I'll wait for them to depreciate. You know, you're like, eventually they'll become more affordable. You know, GT3s, they got to 35 grand. You're like, you know, they were a lot cheaper, they were basically the same price as a brand new Golf GTI, which most people wouldn't consider a particularly flash car.
Yeah.
You know, when my dad bought his first Ferrari a long time ago, it was less, not just than like a 911, it was less money than a M3. Like the M3 he owned at the time, this is the mid-90s, this is a long time ago. The M3 he owned at the time was a much more expensive car, and a Porsche 968, which you could then still buy new, would have cost more money. So actually, although it's still flash, it's a Ferrari, they were a lot more attainable. Yeah. Whereas when I look at something like, for example, a Huayra, just like, I can't see, it's like saying...
You can't see how to get there.
It's like saying like, okay, where's the thing I want? It's in Edinburgh, you got to walk. You're like, oh, that's quite a way, but you know, it can be done. It's like, where's the thing you want? It's in Sydney, and you've got to walk.
Different story.
Yeah, so I don't know, that's me.
Personally, I'm more than happy to go along to the events that have hypercars. I love them. I think the craftsmanship that goes into them is incredible, and you can carry on enjoying a much more eclectic collection. Now, don't get me wrong, I go to all sorts of events. I go to Japanese car events and mixed car events where you've got everything from a literally multicolored Lupo all the way through to, you know, some supercar and even the occasional hypercar.
Look, I'm really, really lucky. I get to play with nice toys all the time. Like, if I'm going to go to a car show, it's because I want to meet and talk to people. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I'd rather do that where just anybody is welcome. Next year, I want to do more just village green car shows. I want to find a bunch of random village green car shows. So if anyone's got any suggestions of just nice village green stuff, I quite like them. Because I tell you what, sometimes these like least pretentious, random local village green shows, the most amazing stuff turns up.
So I guess it's over to you now in the comments. Let us know what kind of events would you go to or not go to, and if a car isn't affordable to you, would you take an interest in it? Would you read about it? Would you look at videos about it? Or would you just say, not interested because I'll never own it? Let us know in the comments.
Thanks for watching.